Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Erica from Confessions of a Homeschooler, and welcome if you're new. Today I'm going to be doing another in my quilting and how to quilt series, and today we're going to be talking about pressing your fabric. Now this might seem like kind of a simple thing, but if you're reading instructions and you're new to quilting and you see something like press to the dark or press open or things like that, then you might be kind of confused as to what that means. So today I'm going to do my best to kind of explain to you what some of those common terms are and how I like to press my quilts, especially if there aren't any instructions, and then just some other helpful tips to try and get nice flat blocks once you're done pressing, especially if you have a lot of seams. Now I have this iron right here, and this one is the Panasonic. It's a cordless iron. And I'm actually really kind of enjoying the fact that there's no cord on here. It makes it really nice and easy. It's also got 2 points on it. Now this is not a sponsored video, so I want to just throw out there really quick. One of the things I spent a lot of time was trying to figure out the best iron, and really quite honestly I have used a variety of irons, and I think they've all worked fairly well as long as it gets hot enough. Now for quilting you do want something that's nice and hot. I also do kind of like something with a little bit of weight to it, because just the weight kind of can help give you a little bit flatter seams when you're pressing. And then I also like to have something that has steam capability and the water squirting capability. Now if you don't have that, you can always just have a little squirt bottle of water handy. I know a lot of people who also use the pressing sprays as well, and if you have something where you're going to be cutting your fabric on the bias, you might even want to use a starch spray. I really don't use a lot of starch spray because honestly, it just seems like one extra step to me, and I've had fairly decent luck with just not using it. So, but it is something to keep in mind. The other thing to look for when you're getting an iron is something that's going to be, easy to use for you. Does it have a long enough cord? Do you even want to deal with a cord? This one with the charger, I was a little bit worried if I was going to be able to iron several things all at once without it losing its heat. And I have to say that I have made lots of quilts using this iron, and it has never once cooled down on me. I've never had any kind of problems with it. So just something that gets nice and hot and that can kind of last. The other thing I like to find or to look for in an iron is an automatic shut-off, because I tend to do a lot of run into my sewing room, sew a few pieces, run back out, I'm making dinner, I may or may not come back in, and sometimes I can forget. And so having an automatic shut-off on your iron is also a great feature to look for. That way you're not like burning your house down if you forget to turn off your iron. Now I will say that I got a really inexpensive, it was like $13 iron from one of the kind of larger stores out there. And that one turned off way too fast. It was like turning off faster than I could, get back to it. And so I was having to return it on every single time I needed to iron something, and that was kind of a hassle. So just look for something that has sort of a decent amount of time but still has the auto shut off on it. Now this one has kind of a nice feature. It's like a removable water tank, so I can fill this separately from the iron and then, just put it back on whenever I need to. It has a decent sized tank. One of the ones I had a little small travel iron that I tried, and I did like it, but one of my major complaints was that the water tank was so tiny that I felt like I was constantly refilling it. So having a decent sized water tank is also something that's nice. Nice feature for your iron. The other thing that I like is to have these what is this called, like a stainless kind of surface. It's nice and shiny. I found that it glides on the fabric really well, and I have tried one that had like a non-stick surface, and for some reason I felt like that was really actually sort of sticking to my fabric, and I know it wasn't supposed to, but I really didn't like that. So this kind of face plate I actually really prefer quite a bit. Now you don't have to go out and buy this particular iron, just these are just some features that I wanted to cover on things that I looked for irons. So something with enough wattage that it can get nice and hot, something with steam, something with spray, or you can use a spray bottle, and then something with a cord that's long enough to kind of fit your area, and then an auto shut off. So those are some of my favorite features to look for when you're looking for an iron for quilting. So let's go ahead and I'm going to show you some different ways to press your fabrics and just some of the different instructions that you might encounter when you're quilting. So let's go take a look at those. So this is the iron I have. I've bought less expensive models. I've tried more expensive models. I am really enjoying this one right now. This one is the cordless iron by Panasonic. And it is really nice because I don't really have to worry about getting tangled up in my cords. And then it's also got points on both ends so I can run it either way. I do really like this shiny kind of stainless backing. This is my favorite backing. I've tried other ones and I feel like they almost kind of drag on the fabric a little bit. This one is really smooth. It flows across the fabric really nice and easy. It also has this removable case, and that's what you fill up with water, and then it has just snaps right on like that, and then right here it's got the spray, and then right here it has the steam, and you can adjust the level of steam that comes out. Now this does have a automatic shut off, and then you just can set it with medium, low, or high for your steam temperatures. And for quilting I always put it on the highest setting. Now I was worried that this might not hold a charge long enough to sew or to iron several pieces of you know, blocks or whatever at one time that I'm working on, and I will say that I have never had it lose its heat before. Now I do replace it onto this charger every time I set it down, so instead of setting it on its side I just set it right back in the charger. And it was a little bit of a weird habit to get into at first because I was so used to setting my iron up on its end, but it's just, you know, now I don't even think about it. I just set it right back in here whenever it's not in use, and so it's always charging while I'm doing something else, and then as soon as I come back to iron more pieces it's nice and hot. So I really do like this one. This is not a sponsored ad by Panasonic, but this has been probably one of my favorite quilting irons thus far. So if that helps any of you out, this one, I'll look and see exactly which model this one is. On my thing back here, I got it off Amazon and it says WL600 and 1500 watts. So I think the wattage is important. The higher the wattage, the hotter your iron can get, and that's really nice hot iron is what you're going to want for quilting fabrics. So this is kind of my current pressing setup, and this is just on the other side of my sewing machine. So my sewing table is right here behind me. Now one thing that's important when you're wanting to press fabric for quilting is to have a nice firm surface. I think that has really helped get a nice smooth straight seam and nice flat blocks. Now if you'll notice, I have a regular ironing board right here, and if I feel with my fingers, it's got that wire grate underneath it, and it's only got this little piece of foam here, and so I can really tell a difference when I'm ironing straight on my ironing board versus using the quilter's pad. So this is actually quite firm. There's a piece of wood in here with probably some batting and then covered with canvas, and this gives a much nicer pressing surface, I find. So I actually just keep this on top of here, and I really don't use my ironing board surface at all unless I'm going to be ironing, you know, out my entire quilt top and I really need the space. But for all intensive purposes, daily, making smaller blocks, I always press on this board, and I find that it gives me much nicer, flatter blocks. So that's my first recommendation. Now I do plan to cover this because regular ironing boards have the point at the end for, you know, ironing clothing and whatnot, and quilters, it's just nice to have a square shape. So I do plan on getting a piece of plywood and creating my own ironing surface to set on top, and I'll probably just use this as the base. So when I do that, I'll go ahead and film that tutorial, but for now this setup works well, and then my iron sets here, and there's a plug on my wall down there, so I just can plug everything in, and it's, you know, I'm not tripping over cords and that kind of thing. So some patterns will actually tell you which way to press your blocks when you're quilting, and so they'll be indicated by these little arrows, and as you can see, they're kind of telling me, okay, press the fabric going this way or press it going this way, and so you'll want to follow that if it's on your pattern. If it's not on your pattern, I typically tend to press toward the dark fabric, and so what that means is I have a white with a dark on the back here, and so what I'll do is I'll press going toward the dark, meaning I'm going to push my seam toward the dark fabric. Since this particular pattern actually told me to press towards the white, then I'm actually going to press it going this way. Alright, so I line up my little pile of blocks to press here. I know they need to all be going the same direction. So the first thing I'll do is just set my seams. So And that just kind of gets that thread like nice and buried in there. It kind of loosens it up a little bit. And I'll just fold it open and press. Now if you're having a hard time keeping it staying, a little bit of steam is always good. Some people feel like that stretches the fabric out. I don't really feel like that. I feel like I get a nice crisp crease that way, so I usually use steam. And then I'll just set it over here to the side, grab my next one, and just keep going. And this makes really fast work out of ironing your pieces if you kind of have a little assembly line situation happening. I will even sometimes just leave pieces there and just iron right on top of them. If you're also having a hard time, I found that the spray works just as good as well. And you can just spray your pieces to get a nice even iron. Now, I am kind of ironing slightly. I'm really more like pressing it, and it's probably hard to tell since I'm filming from above, but it's kind of like you press it down and then I sort of push this one open. For the most part, when you're ironing in quilting, you're going to want to press your fabric, meaning you want to just kind of go up and down on it, kind of like press it, versus pushing with your iron, because that can stretch and distort your pieces. I also, if I have something with a lot of seams, I'll flip it over often and also just give it a quick press from the back side as well, and that just kind of helps set the seam. Another trick I've learned is if you kind of pile them up when you're done and put something heavy on top of them, like a book or your ruler or something like that, that puts a little bit of weight while they're cooling, that can also really help flatten out your seams as well. One other trick I've had, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little crease right here in this fabric, and so I'll just hit it with a little bit of my spray and then go over it, and I found that that really helps get out the tougher creases a little bit better than steam, in my opinion. So if you do have some kind of a fairly decent crease from like where your material's been folded on the bolt, or what, you know, folded in fat quarters or whatever, a little bit of spritz water on there and then just lay your hot iron on top of that, and it really seems to take care of any extra creases that have found their way into the fabric. Alright, so in the event that you aren't paying attention, like I wasn't on this block and I ironed my seam going the wrong way, I just want to show you that it's not a huge deal. Now, I did want my seams to nest, and since I accidentally ironed it the wrong way, all I did was hold it down the correct direction with my finger, and then when I come over to iron this block out, I can just fix the seam and push it back the correct way. So it's not the end of the world if you end up ironing something backwards. However, it is nice to have your seams nesting, which basically means going the opposite direction. That way when you pull them out, you'll have a nice point where the fabric meets together. So it is kind of worth it to fix your seams direction if you can. It's not the worst, you know, thing in the world if it's some situation where you can't do it. I have had to sew them going the wrong direction. It's not a big deal. But if you can nest them where possible, even if you accidentally ironed it the wrong way the first time, it's really easy to fix, so don't worry about that. So when you're ironing two pieces together, you want to make sure that you're getting your fabric pulled, you know, nice and tight. You don't want to have it where you're ironing it open and then there's like a little crease here that you can kind of move back and forth with your hands. So you just want to make sure you're nice and tight. You don't want to stretch it, but you don't want there to be any kind of gap there either, because it'll change the size of your block, and then it'll also kind of make your quilt block a little bit wonky. So I just like to kind of push it with the tip of my iron and just make sure that I've got a nice kind of seam right there. And as you can hopefully see, I don't have any, I can't really pull it at all. It's nice and taut with the stitch line. So your stitch line should be just right behind that fold, so you don't want to have any kind of, you know, overlap or anything like that. So just make sure it's nice and tight. You don't want to obviously pull it too much where you can see your stitch line or anything. Just a nice smooth crease right there. Alright, now when you get to the point where you have a lot of seams going on, I find it easier to iron the back side first, just so I can kind of control the direction I want with my seams. And I do kind of iron the back side first anyways, but I'll lay it down and just gently tugging on this kind of end of the block. You might be able to see me kind of pulling just a little bit. That way I'm getting a nice crease there, and then I can kind of press back down. And if I've got a lot of seams like this, I will also flip this block over and hit it just from the front as well. And I do have steam going on as well, so that if you'll notice there's a lot of little seams in this block. Now if you want to really make it flat, you can leave it on the ironing board until it dries, or I mean cools down. I don't like to do that because I'm usually ironing several pieces at once, so I will take this and just go move it onto a flat surface while it cools, and then I'll iron another one. Now if you run into something here where a seam got kind of sewn in a little bit wonky and you're not having it lay nicely, you know, I mean, unless you're doing this quilt for a show or something, I mean, I really just am not even going to bother to go in and try and fix that. I do give it a nice good press, use steam, get it as flat as I can. I also will look at it from the front and just make sure that it's not looking wonky from the front, but as you can tell, it's not even really affecting the front of my quilt at all right there. And so I will just leave that in there. And the truth be told, no one's ever going to be able to see the inside of your quilt. They're just going to see the top. And by the time you get all of this sewn together and quilted and washed and all crinkly and fun, like nobody's even going to know anything like this ever even happened. So I honestly don't even really worry about these little things. Mistakes happen, and you know, this is just a fun process for me. I'm not trying to win any awards or anything. And you know, honestly, I'm not sure how big of a deal that is if you're submitting something for a show or whatever, but I'm usually just making quilts for fun, and so, you know, mistakes happen. You just got to kind of roll with it and not worry about it. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found those tips helpful. As always, if you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to email me at erica@confessionsofahomeschooler. And as I mentioned, I am doing some fun giveaways for all of my quilting series videos. This one is from me today, and I actually made this. This is called the Goody Goody Binding Kit, and it's a free online pattern by Vanessa Gortzen. It's really cute. I'll show you the inside here in just a second of it, but I just wanted to give one away to one of you as just a fun little gift for watching my videos. If you want to enter to win this Goody Goody Binding Kit, just head on over to my blog, and I will put a link in the description box below for you, and just hopefully you'll find this helpful in your sewing. So I hope you enjoyed this video on how to press your fabric, and I will see you for the next one.